Every state has their famous urban legends, but these legends from Georgia are about as Southern Gothic as it gets. Although there are strange legends with eerie similarities from around the country and even the world, there is so much that is uniquely Georgian in their own urban legends. These stories will surely make you look over your shoulder and think twice before visiting some of these places. Every state has at least one legend of Crybaby Bridge, and many states have multiple versions attached to it, all eerie with similarity. Crybaby Bridge in Columbus, Georgia has three legends surrounding it. One version says that a mother drowned her three children in the waters below, and that you can still hear the wails of the infant. A second story simply states that a baby drowned in the creek below, and that the spirit of the child still haunts the area. The third version of the story says back in the 1800s, a poor family was expecting the birth of a fifth child. The husband knew he couldn't afford to feed another mouth, so he arranged with a doctor to get rid of the infant immediately after birth. After the birth, the doctor did what was requested and took the baby to the bridge and dropped it over the side. Reports of paranormal phenomena on and around the bridge say that if you drive onto the bridge under a full moon, a strange mist or fog will appear near the bridge. There are also reports of random cold spots, the sounds of a baby crying in the woods, phantom footsteps coming towards you, and ghostly figures seen in the woods. Marietta, Georgia, like most southern towns, has its share of ghost stories. But of all the alleged haunted places in Marietta, the most famous is the Kennesaw House. Located next to the railroad tracks and adjacent to the Welcome Center, the location of the house makes it easy to picture the bygone times. History is in the air, and it seems likely that the shades from the past linger there and all around the square. The Kennesaw building was built as a cotton warehouse in 1840, but was later turned into a restaurant serving passengers from the railroad. The Fletchers bought the building in 1855 and turned it into an inn. Being next to the railroad made it a natural home for the Union soldiers and spies during the Civil War, especially since Mr. Fletcher was an alleged Union sympathizer. It was from the Kennesaw House, known then as the Fletcher House, that James Andrew and his group of spies plotted their attempt to steal the train, the General. In 1864, the hotel was taken over by the Union Army, and Sherman used it as a headquarters for a short time. The building was also used as a hospital and morgue during the Civil War. Most of the paranormal activity reported from the Kennesaw House seems to stem from when the building was used as a makeshift hospital and morgue. There are many reports from visitors who descend into the basement by the elevator only to be greeted with the horrific sight of a crowded hospital room with men screaming in pain, blood everywhere, and weary surgeons operating, removing limbs with little or no anesthesia. Others have reported seeing the apparition of a Civil War-era surgeon dressed in uniform who likes to ride the elevator. Other spirits that have been reported, mostly by children visitors, is a woman in an old-fashioned dress with a pink trim. Some have identified her as the lady in the portrait in the house, which is of Miss Fletcher, wife of the second original owner. Today, the Kennesaw House is a museum. Located along the Wilmington River, Bonaventure Cemetery is known for its gorgeous magnolia, dogwood, live oaks, and colorful azaleas and interesting tombstones. There is one particular headstone that stops visitors in their tracks. Surrounded by a long iron fence, sitting pensively with her right hand resting upon a tree stump, is the statue of a little girl. Gracie Watson, also known as Little Gracie, was the daughter of Wales and Margaret Watson, who took over management of the Pulaski Hotel in the 1880s. There were a lot of parties held at the hotel, which Gracie often attended. The little girl charmed the guests with her lovable personality. When Gracie grew tired of mingling, she would slip away and play beneath the back stairwell. Her disappearing act became a running joke with partygoers who would ask aloud, "Where's Gracie?" as a way of acknowledging the lateness of the hour. 2 days before Easter in 1889, little Gracie died of pneumonia at the age of 6. Gracie's father hired a sculptor to carve a life-size monument of Gracie using a photograph as a reference. The finished work became the marker of her grave at the Bonaventure Cemetery. It is also said to be eerily accurate all the way down to the shape of her mouth. Visitors to little Gracie's grave often leave toys and other objects for her. Some have reported that Gracie's statue cries tears of blood if these gifts are removed. There have also been reports of a little girl in a white dress skipping through the cemetery in the grass just before disappearing. Other reports from the Bonaventure Cemetery include the sound of a baby crying near an infant's grave and the giggling of children. But the most disturbing report is the sound of a pack of dogs snarling and barking angrily. No one has ever seen these dogs, but many have heard them. Built in 1832, the historic Lawrenceville jail sits at the end of an alley west of Courthouse Square and was used until 1940. In 1840, a slave named Ellic and his wife Betsy were having dinner when their master, Colonel James Austin, came barging in drunk, demanding access to Betsy. Ellic fought him off so Betsy could escape. After chasing Ellic up a ladder, Colonel Austin fell backwards off the ladder and died. Ellic went to the courthouse to confess, hoping for leniency because it was an accident, but the courts found him guilty of murder and sentenced him to hang. While imprisoned at the Lawrenceville jail, Ellic tried to escape by chipping away at the cell wall with a piece of metal from his bed. The guards caught him and chained him to the floor by his wrists and ankles, where he sang a mournful song to his beloved Betsy. "Oh, Betsy, will you meet me? Betsy, will you meet me? Betsy, will you meet me in heaven above?" 1 month later, his sentence was carried out. It is reported that you can still hear Ellic singing for his wife in the old cell, and that the indentation is still there where he tried to escape. Local shopkeepers have also reported strange events, like books flying off the shelves at nights. They have attributed these events to Ellic as well. The Alpha Gamma Delta sorority house in Athens, Georgia, hosts more than exclusive parties and secret initiation rites. The 124-year-old house is reported to have a ghost of a young woman that was abandoned at the altar. According to historical records, the house was built by William Winstead Thomas in 1896 as an engagement gift for his daughter Isabel and her fiancé Richard Johnson. However, when the day of the wedding arrived, Richard didn't show up. Isabel was so heartbroken that she went into the house and hung herself in a room directly below the attic. The sorority bought the house in 1939, and since then there have been many reports of strange occurrences. The sorority sisters have reported doors opening and closing by themselves, faucets turning on and off, the sounds of chairs moving in the attic, lights flickering with no explanation, and the antique piano in the parlor has been known to play by itself. Some of the girls reported seeing faces in the window, and some have even reported seeing a wispy figure in their rooms. Legends also state that the girls who live in the room directly below the attic become engaged within a year, and any other members who see the spirit in other parts of the house can also expect to find love in the near future. Evidently, Isabella is playing matchmaker from beyond. Formerly the Winkoff Hotel, Atlantis Ellis Hotel has a dark claim to fame, tied to a horrific fire on December 7, 1946, which claimed the lives of 119 people. The scale of the tragedy was such that the hotel was dubbed the Titanic of Peachtree, because when the hotel was opened in 1913, the owners claimed it was fireproof. Most of the lives lost in that fire burned alive or died of asphyxiation, but there was also a large number of people that died when they jumped from the windows trying to escape. It is also rumored that a local criminal named the Candyman was the one who set the fire to the hotel. The hotel closed after the tragic fire and remained closed for many years before reopening as the Ellis Hotel. Because of the amount of death that the Ellis Hotel has seen, it is no surprise it is considered one of the most haunted hotels in Atlanta, Georgia. Staff and guests have reported some terrifying paranormal activity throughout the hotel. There are frequent sightings of apparitions, and it is very common to hear what is described as heartbreaking screams from women and children. Another common occurrence is reported that the fire alarm goes off at exactly 2:48 a.m., the exact time the fire broke out in 1946. Originally, the Masquerade Nightclub was a Dupree Excelsior mill built in 1890. The mill was abandoned several times after unfortunate accidents that resulted in deaths and even a few mysterious fires and a tuberculosis outbreak that affected several mill workers. Eventually, the mill did expand to support the war efforts of World War II, and by the 1960s, the mill was abandoned once again due to the reduced demand for Excelsior. By the 1970s, the building was a storage facility, which closed down in 1977 and then became a pizzeria for a brief time in 1978. By the 1980s, it became the nightclub we know today. The Masquerade was a hotspot through the 1990s and 2000s. It had 3 levels appropriately named: Hell, Purgatory, and Heaven. There are reports of screams heard on the stairs to the bathroom, which people believe to come from the children who used to work at the mill. Employees also have reported cold spots, seeing misty apparitions, and hearing phantom footsteps. Some people have reported that the sound system amplifiers have been turned upside down with no explanation, and the speakers have mysteriously been turned around also. Both are reported to happen on a nightly basis. The most reported apparition is that of an African American male whom is seen wandering the club after hours. Many believe he is the one responsible for the sound gear maneuvering. Built in the 1950s, Lake Lanier is a man-made lake with an eerie construction. In order to get the space it needed for the giant lake, which covers about 58 miles, several towns were flooded. There is an entire underwater graveyard of towns that sits intact at the bottom of the lake. Since its creation, there have been many deaths and accidents, ranging from boating accidents and drownings to cars running off the road into the lake for no apparent reason. Reports from survivors say it felt like invisible hands were dragging them deep underwater. Just in 2011 alone, there were about 20 mysterious deaths reported at Lake Lanier, and many more every year are reported. In Augusta, Georgia, a pillar stood in the middle of the town's market, and the remnants of the pillar is all that remains of the city's old market. According to legends, a traveling preacher was denied permission to preach at the market, and he placed a curse on it. The preacher stood in the middle of the square and threatened that a great wind would destroy the market except for one pillar, and that whoever tried to remove it would be struck dead. Shortly after, a rare winter tornado blew through the market, leaving only one pillar. Reports as recent as the 1950s show that anyone that has tried to remove the pillar meets an unfortunate end. Part of the Cohada Mountains, a small mountain range at the southern end of the Appalachian Mountains, Fort Mountain takes its name from the remnants of a stone formation located on its peak. There are several theories as to who might have built this wall. Early visitors say that the formation was a fort built by Hernando de Soto to defend against the Creek Indians sometime around 1540. Two other legends say that the wall was built by the Moon-Eyed people, according to the Cherokee legends, or even by a Welsh prince who made his way to America around 1170. According to Cherokee lore, Moon-Eyed people lived in the lower Appalachia area before the Cherokee came during the late 1700s. They were called Moon-Eyed people because they couldn't see very well during the day, but could see very well at night. The Cherokee who drove them out of the region say the people built ancient structures around the area and once had a temple that stood inside the fortification that resembled a giant snake with a ruby eye. No one knows what legends and theories are true. The answers are still buried in the mountain, awaiting to be discovered. Reports from the area include the sounds of distant drums, unexplainable flickering lights, and the images of men wearing bearskins have been encountered along the wall. A more current report says that a young man went to visit the historical site. While there, he asked a friend to take his picture. When the picture was taken, he screamed and fainted. 2 days later, he died at the hospital. When the pictures were developed, the last photo revealed a ghostly figure of a woman standing next to the boy, even though there was no one else with them. People say the woman is the wife of a Cherokee Indian chief.